Mark Anderson with the Red Wing Bridge Project, project manager. We're going to give you an update here, some exciting things moving today, and maybe we can talk about what's happening in the next few days at night, some of that night construction, where they're moving with the main tub girders. So with that, I'll let Mark kind of get started on a little bit of what's happening and schedule here.
Okay, so the contractor's been working with the tub girders between the south abutment, span 1, or Pier 1. That first span, they are completing the last of their activities today. They've got all 3 lines of tub girders done to what they call piece 5, which is the piece that hangs over from the piece over the pier into the main channel. So they've got 5 pieces on each run done. So now they're going to start shifting their focus and go back to the Wisconsin side and work on span 3. So they'll work from Pier 3 back towards Pier 2. And that should start, I believe, Thursday. They're going to start their work.
Okay, yeah, and they were, the Zenith Tech's project manager was in today at our Levy Park project meeting saying that they need today and tomorrow to kind of tear down the crane and get that moved out. So we got to kind of keep access through the park so they can take that large crane over to Wisconsin to do that span 3, correct?
Okay. Yep, yeah. That would be one of them. Yep. Okay.
And then maybe a little bit on that. So the span 1 on the Minnesota side was done by pushing those main tub girders across. But over on the span 3, those will all be set with crane. Is that correct?
Right.
There's no actual launching kind of pushing.
No, there won't. They'll do most of their splices on the ground, and then they'll lift everything into place.
Okay.
So I'm not sure that they can lift all the run from Pier 3 to Pier 2 at one time.
Because that is a longer span.
Right. So they may be lifting and holding as they do a final splice. They call it an air splice. They'll do one up in the air.
Okay. And Nancy was in the audience. We were just talking about all those bolts that are going in. So one of those connections, how many bolts are used on connecting those tub girders?
It can be up to between 1,600 to 2,000 bolts. So. Okay.
Do you help up there with cranking those down?
No.
We talked about that last time. That's quite a they have a certain specs on torquing those to the proper and keeping the bolts of course at a proper temperature and all that.
They have a process for turning them or make sure they get snug tight to start with around the connection. And then they come back and do what they call the turn of the nut to make sure they get the proper torque on the bolt.
Okay. And then I know a lot of talk is then we have span 1 kind of tubs in, moving over to do span 2. Or span 3, and then span 2 over the river. When that starts, that'll all be done off of barges, correct?
Yes. Yep.
The crane set up on the barge, and same thing.
Several.
It'll be picked and held, and bolted.
Right in the air.
In the air for all 3 of those runs.
Mm-hmm.
And as of today, they're looking at hopefully having that span 2 across the river done by mid-April. Is that kind of what you got?
I believe they hope to have that done by around the first weekend in April.
Okay.
That's their plan as of now, I think.
Okay.
And that is including a lot of weekend work, so they'll be here Saturdays and Sundays working.
Yeah, that's another thing we want to get out there. There's Saturdays and Sundays they're working a lot of days right now, and then now maybe talk about what's happening the next 3 nights.
Yeah, for the night work, the contractor's been removing the cofferdam at Pier 2, so they've been vibrating the sheets out and taking the rings out of the water there. So it'll be going on. They're working that 24 hours, I think, until they get that done, because they need that work done prior to setting the tub girders on Pier 2. I
suppose they need that because they need that room to be able to get those sheets out. They don't want a girder up above them that is restricting their crane movement to get that work done. So that makes sense. Okay. Yeah, and then we talked about spans 1, 2, and 3, and all that's done. And I think I heard hopefully start decking toward the mid-April, correct? And,
I believe so, yes.
And how long, so decking of that's got to be quite a long operation to get all the way across.
Yeah, and we haven't seen the plans yet either for that, so we're still waiting. And then there is a certain process for actually pouring the deck. There's certain pieces you have to do to load the tub girders properly.
Oh, I suppose that you're not loading something too much weight on one part of it and stressing something.
Right.
So you got to construct it in kind of a sequence that loads it equally across the spans. So.
Yep.
Okay. I know, so that's kind of what we're doing, tub girders and then moving into decking. And then I just want to make sure everyone knows, once we have weather that allows us to build road, we're going to jump onto it. We're not going to delay on that. We want to get in there on 3rd Street and Potter and the slip ramp coming down Bluff Street and get final curb and gutter in, get structures all adjusted.
Get that all work done and cleaned up and get out of there. Get
that open back up. I know there's businesses there that are affected by that. We got parking lots that are kind of partially cut open there and at Red Wing Shoe and at Marie's. So we want to get in there and get that done as soon as weather allows. So.
Right.
All right. Mark, do you want to show? We got a few pictures of what's been going on this past month to show.
Need to see what I'm looking at.
Well, Mark's loading that up. Our contractor at Levy Park has been working with Zenith Tech to get in and out with Pier 1, and that's been going well, and it's a tight area down there. If you've been down to Levy Park, we've got a lot of work going on that project, trying to get stuff done before the water that we know is going to come up. We just don't know how high, but it's going to be high, that we need to get as much work as we can before we're kind of flooded out of there. So with that, Mark, you got a few pictures here?
Yep, I do. So this is a picture of one of the lines of the tub girders as they're launching it out towards Pier 1, and then they're lifting the piece that sits over the top of the pier. They're lifting that from the barge and getting that into place as well. So they pull that all together, they meet it and get the splice plates to match up, and then they start stuffing pins and bolts in there to hold it. Then they'll start doing their tensioning and torquing of the bolts.
Okay.
Just a picture, the crane that's sitting on the barge in the river. That's a pretty big crane. That's, I believe, a 300-ton crane, so that's one of the bigger ones I've seen. Here's a picture from down below as they're bringing that piece that sits over the top of the pier into place. And that's another one of the big sections that sits on top of the pier as it's loaded onto the barge over on the Wisconsin side. Just a picture of the internal of the tub girder, the cross bracing in there for the support of the girders.
And that's the cross bracing or diaphragms that are on the inside, but that'll all have its, I think we talked about that, will have its own lighting system in there, so a bridge inspector can walk through and make sure everything looks good from the inside. And
right, yep, that's correct. Picture of Pier 2 as it was, as they were curing the pier cap. That is done now, and all those forms are stripped off and getting ready to set tub girders on top of that pier. That's a picture of the access hatch that's just by the south abutment there.
So that would be an inspector access hatch right there?
Yep.
To get inside of it?
Get inside and do their inspections. That's another picture from underneath the tub by the south abutment. You can see the kind of the camber in the tub girder, and then it's just kind of a neat picture with the launching platform there too. And
that launching platform is where they were those rollers that were on that they rolled across?
It has a platform that rolls. Yeah, they push it out with the crane and push it towards Pier 1.
Okay.
Yep. And just another picture of how the tub sits at the south abutment. And there's kind of a picture of that launching platform. You can see how the tub girder sits on top of that, little cross bracing there. Mm-hmm. And then it gets pushed. Like Jay said, it has rollers that gets pushed out towards the Pier 1. And same picture. That's it.
Okay, we saw some pictures of basically the work that has been done, and all three runs are in place, and they're, like we said, they're starting to take the crane apart and move that out so they can get it on the Wisconsin side. So speaking of the Wisconsin side, give us an update kind of on what's happening with the surcharge and the box culvert and things over there.
Well, we really haven't seen much information lately, but the surcharge, it's still sitting there. Last I've heard, it had, I believe, around 17 inches of settlement so far, and they're expecting somewhere in the 34 to 35 inches of settlement, so we're about halfway done, it appears, right now.
Okay.
And that's
So
for the main surcharge for the, by the south abutment, or for the
basically,
north abutment.
we need that full surcharge to be done before you start seeing road being built, permanent road
Before we
being
pull
built.
that
Yep.
excess material off.
Okay. And on the box culvert, is there work going on that right now, or will that start up?
The only work on the box culvert right now is they need to pull the sheets, so they allow fish passage back and forth between the, on Mud Lake there, I think.
Okay, for the spawning
Spawn
season.
season,
Spawn
right.
season, okay. So we got those requirements that we have to meet. What about the bald eagle nest there? That's still active and?
Yeah, I guess we're gonna have to check on that. I haven't noticed anything there lately, but
Okay.
we'll have to see what's going on there.
Okay. Yeah. All right, well, how about, we got a few in the audience here. Any questions that talk about that you've seen? I mean, they've been working a lot of hours, and like you said, it's going to be night work here for 3 days in a row, 3 nights in a row to get that sheeting out on Pier 2 on the Wisconsin side. Is that a real noisy operation? You'll hear the vibrating a little bit?
It can be.
It can
yeah,
be?
It doesn't sound like they're getting a lot done every night or every day. It's about a couple sheets per shift, so.
Okay.
Hopefully, because they have to pull it out and scrape it and then let it sit for a couple of days for the invasive species
That's right, they really have
die
to
off.
clean, they have to clean them and get them scraped before they haul them to make sure that they're not transporting anything from that Mississippi River over to the next project somewhere else, that get whatever's on there for species off of the sheeting. I think that's what I had for the update, and we're excited because this is the kind of the project controlling is getting these main spans, these 3 that we've talked about. We got 1 done, 2 left to do.
Left to do, right.
The 2 that are left are both bigger than the first one we
Right,
did.
and the one is over the river, so
One's over
that's
the
a
river.
concern to get it done before the river opens up.
Before we have shipping needs open up, and our contractors working closely with the Army Corps to kind of get those dates figured out and make sure we
And
can
the,
get
and the river industry too.
in the river industry so we can get that work done. So with that, we'll be back here next month, and we'll see where we're at that point. So thank you.